Hey everyone, what is going on? It is Jeff Trevarthen, Jeff the Mortgage Pro. If you're watching this on YouTube, that's probably what channel you're on. Welcome to the Homebuyer Success Podcast, where we chat with real estate agents throughout the country and we get their opinions on what is working in the market, get some tips and tricks and advice from them, and we learn how we can help you get into your next home or your dream home or your first home or wherever it is that you're buying. Maybe even an investment property going forward. So again, my name is Jeff Trevarthen. I do residential real estate mortgages. I'm licensed in 25 states and my company is licensed in all 50. So if you have a loan anywhere in the country that you need help with, we are happy to help you out and we would love to do that. But let's get into our topic today with our host. I'm your host today, and I want to introduce somebody that I met just the other day, and I think he's a great person, and I really enjoy. I think this is going to be a great conversation today. Mr. Lee.Stevens out of Reno, Nevada, with the Realty ONE group. So welcome into the podcast, Lee.
Jeff, thanks so much for having me. It's been great getting to know you over the couple of calls, and I'm excited to help and add value to any buyers out there.
Yeah, great. Well, so let's start off, Lee. Why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about where you are from, what's your market, talk about how you have your business structured, your team, and kind of like what type of numbers you guys do in terms of buyers or sellers in any given year.
Okay, so I grew up in Fallon, Nevada. It's about 30 miles east of Reno, and Reno's like the 80s Vegas, if you want to think of it like that. It's an interesting market. I was in another field and I was just getting pummeled by all the activity coming into town, and that made me wonder if I should get in real estate. So I switched careers and I got into real estate 5 years ago. Was pretty good at it, started building a business, and then once I had more business that I could handle, started building a team. And today my team is the second largest in Northern Nevada with about 25 agents now, which is crazy. We do pretty big business. We have 165 units sold year to date. And last year, the team was like half the size and we did 100. So I'm pretty excited, and we do a lot of buyer business. I think over 80% of our business is buyer business. So I have a lot to say about how to win in today's market. And then the other thing is I'm a buyer myself. I just bought and closed last Wednesday. That's when we chatted. So
awesome. Well, that's great, man. What a great numbers in 5 years to ramp up your business to that many transactions. Like kudos to you. That is phenomenal. What a great run rate over the last couple of years. You got in like right before COVID, and then you had to deal with COVID and all that stuff too. So
I did.
What an awesome thing. So let's get right into it here. Let's talk a little bit about, I've got some questions here that I'll ask you, and I haven't prepared these questions with Lee, so he doesn't know what I'm going to ask. So I think he'll give us his honest and raw feedback on every one of these questions here. So give us an example, Lee, of a challenging negotiation that you have encountered and how you've advocated for that buyer to actually win the deal and get into contract.
Oh man, there are so many. Let's say there was, for an example, here was a family, a couple of guys that were looking for a long time with us, and they finally found a home, and it was a spec build, but it was a mobile home. So this wasn't represented by a big builder or anything. And we had to put the deal together. They basically had no funds. They had some, but not a large amount. And they wanted a garage, they wanted AC in this unit, they wanted the finishes fixed. And this builder, or this, who is like a mom and pop operator, had this unit, and we put that one together just by working together and going through the construction process with these guys and switching it up. And that was a thing where ego was put aside and we were trying to serve our clients and trying to accomplish a goal. It's a pretty good one.
Wow.
There's many though.
Yeah, it's any other examples you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, I like the ones where there's always so you enter into contract and then you have a deal going on, and then during the middle of the deal, it switches somehow, some situation changes. For instance, we had a condo that we were purchasing, and there was an assessment. This is actually a deal that's going on right now that was like a little surprise. So $6,000 assessment. Everyone had their numbers set. So what do we do? Does the buyer pay it? Does the seller pay it? And we put our heads together, and both agents contributed a small amount of commission, and then the sellers contributed the rest. If we wouldn't have done that, the deal would have fallen apart, and we wouldn't have got that transaction done.
Wow, that's that's pretty awesome that you were able to do that. I think people forget that when you get into contract on a property, that there's still a lot of things that you need to do before you actually close on the transaction. Like there could be a lot of left turns that happen, and things could go wrong here and there. I know, just speaking from the lending side, that um, we always try to fly in a straight line, but ultimately there's going to be some turbulence along the way, and we don't know what that turbulence is until we have an underwriter look at it, or we get an appraisal back, and you never know what's going to happen. But to have something like an assessment pop up where nobody knows that's coming, that's kind of a crazy story right there to be able to deal with. So it's important that people realize too that once we are in contract, like our job, as on the buyer side of stuff, Lee, is that you're there to represent the buyer in their best interests. So if you're going to try to make a deal work, you're doing everything you can to help them win. Like you don't want them to have a bad deal or have a bad situation where they lose out on something. So what a cool thing to do to be able to contribute to their to contribute a little bit of commission to be able to get them their house that they are really looking for. So great job there.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
How would you address I don't know if this is if this happens in your market or not. So let me ask you this: how do you address environmental concerns or sustainability preferences that some buyers may have in their property search? Are there like a lot of people that are environmentally friendly or looking for things like that in your market?
There are a few. A lot of people who are migrating to this area from California, and that's on their mind, and I think it's a valid concern. If it's an environmental concern as far as energy efficiency or how the home was built, we've got to either filter towards the newer construction. Those are usually Energy Star rated, and they've got all the newest insulation, the best code. If they want that custom or semi-custom feel in the old part of the neighborhood, then I would put them with a contractor to talk to them about, the cost and some of the things that we can do to make this more energy efficient or environmentally friendly. There's a lot of different things: the inside, outside space, the way to switch out the windows, the roofing, the solar. All these things come into play when they're looking for something like that. It's pretty interesting, and I would say that most of the new builders are leaning that way.
Yeah. Do you find that a lot of the new builders? So just so the listeners know, Reno, from what Leah's told me the other day, is that Reno is a market where it is expanding like crazy. There's lots of new construction all over the place. Do you see the builders doing a lot of stuff with solar right now? I mean, is that a trend, or is that something that people add
No.
on afterwards? Or
Yes. Yeah. It's right now, it's completely third party out here. I mean, we have Tesla here. So there's a lot of Solar City going on. And then there's a few other players in the market that just approach new homes and then they add it on. This is a sunny area. So if you have some land, you can do a whole farm and actually have the thing tick backwards. I have a couple of clients where they're actually paid to have solar.
Wow. What a sweet deal.
Yeah, it's a sweet deal. It's a big space that it takes up, so you need some property to do this.
Yeah.
But all of it offsets the cost, and it's pretty popular.
Yeah, I know in California, they had this whole net metering thing where you could get a really, really good deal if you purchased a solar system all the way up until April of 2023. And that's since changed. And so most of the people who are working on solar type stuff now have gone into like just leasing the solar unit. So I always wonder, what are the economics of that? I've never really dove deep into it myself, but I always wonder if solar is a good deal or not. I know it's hard to deal with when you're doing lending, whether it's a purchased unit or a leased unit, and you have to figure out how to transfer that from the people that own it now to the new buyers that are going to buy it. So I never liked dealing with solar during a transaction, but I can see how it is energy efficient. It could be a good deal for some people, right?
I have some numbers. I have a deal going on with solar right now. So what Jeff is talking about is this lease situation. When it's purchased, it's pretty easy, but when it's purchased, the equipment's usually older. Yep. So sometimes as a selling agent, you have to deal with the removal of that product. But when you have it and it's more current product, it's either break even or it reduces their power bill to like $20 a month. So it's pretty cool. And then to transfer it, as long as they're in good standing and the buyers are into taking that over, which usually they are as long as it's installed properly because it lowers the power bill. And we transfer the lease, and that does delay things, especially if we're not all over it.
Yeah, they're notoriously they don't call you back sometimes, and I think some of them that I've dealt with, like don't even answer the phone. Like there is no phone number you can call. You have to do it all like online or something.
Yeah, email, all by email. It's crazy.
Imagine that in 2023 that has to happen.
I know.
All right, next question. How do you help buyers understand the long-term potential and future growth prospects of a properties that they're considering?
Oh, that's I talk about wealth accumulation a lot. When you do a transaction with me or someone on my team, it's always about a financial plan to build and grow. I have real life stories of people where just 3 homes into our relationship, they're now, real estate millionaires. And that's a goal that I set with everybody. For an example, there's a guy who works at T-Mobile and another guy who runs a landscaping company, and their first house was $260,000. This was right when I got into real estate. It was a brutal experience the first time. And then they hit me up about 2.5 years later to buy another home. This one was nicer. It was almost 500 grand. Got them a good deal. And now with those 2 homes, they're at over $700,000 in real estate properties owned, plus all the equity, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And now, 3 years later, they just bought their 3rd property, and they just keep moving up every 2 or 3 years. So that's pretty easy. This is another area where it's still appreciating even in the slower markets. And then you've got, the debt pay down. So you've got the debt pay down. I don't want to call it debt destruction, but if you rent it out, someone else is paying that debt down, increasing the equity as you're adding assets that pay off over time. So it's something that I get really fired up about, and it's how we approach pretty much every transaction. There's even most people don't even think about this, but let's say, Jeff, you get someone pre-approved and we squeeze them into a house, where it's a really tight situation. Well, I'll have a conversation with them and say this whole situation can change in just 2 or 3 years by either you talking to Jeff and getting a cash out, or you can sell the property 1 or 2 times and go from in debt to having hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. And that's true. I've done that personally.
Yeah, I love talking about this stuff. It kind of, you and I both know that real estate is the vehicle where most of the world's wealth comes from. I think, isn't that a statistic that I've heard or read sometimes? Like 90% of millionaires, are millionaires because of what they did in real estate investing type stuff. I don't know if it's 90%. I just made that number up, but it seems like it's 90%.
Don't fact check this.
But it's just a really kind of a cool thing. I always think about like what I would have done differently or do over if I was, buying my first house right now. And I think what I would have done is exactly what you're talking about with your clients there, is that I probably would have started off, buying a residence as early as I possibly could. Something in my early 20s. I actually was thinking about doing this at the time. This was like, early 2000s. And I had looked for a property in Portland, Oregon, and I remember it was a for sale by owner, and it was $180,000. I'm thinking, man, I should try to buy this, figure it out. And it was like, I had no idea what I was doing with financing. I have no idea how to negotiate anything with seller financing. So I was like, kind of walked away from it. And I look back and I'm like, man, that house is probably worth almost $1 million right now. Not to say that I just missed out on a good opportunity, but if I was starting over, I would do the same thing. I would buy a property. I would live in it for a couple of years. I would turn it around and sell it. I would turn around and rent it out and then buy my next primary residence. And then I would just keep doing that down the line until things got, too much to handle with family and kids and schools and things like that. But I think that that would be the way to go if I was going to, start over again in my real estate career. Now it's, family and dogs and, all this other stuff that makes it a little bit more difficult to do that stuff. So you have to go buy rental property instead of moving your primary residence from here to there. So what would you do if you were, starting out in real estate again?
Well, I think I have a pretty cool story personally. I would definitely buy sooner.
Yeah.
And I always tell anyone that interacts with me on the buy side, especially when they're asking me if now's a good time to buy, I challenge them with a question. I say, ask, 3 or 4 of your friends, and unless they bought in 2009 or some terrible timing like that, every single one of those people says that they wish they would have started sooner.
Yeah.
So I was renting. I was one of those people that was year to year. Every year I would move. I moved to different, nicer apartments. And my wife was hitting me up to buy a house. And we bought a house about 7 years ago for $196,000. We got into it with $6,000 in cash. I got a really good deal at the time. It had no AC. It had a pretty big lot. It was yellow. It stank. Didn't really do anything with it. Just moved in, lived there for 6 years. Was getting ready to move out to a different part of town. So I moved into a rental. I did the flooring. I painted the home. And that was about maybe $11,000. And we sold it for $445,000. So we pocketed over 200 grand. And that's what I used to buy the house that I just purchased, which is $1 million home. So with $6,000, and this is the first home I purchased was when I was not in real estate. But for $6,000, I basically got $1 million property over time. And that's the power of real estate. I mean, I have hundreds of stories, honestly, with all my clients where we've done some incredible things to help them build wealth. I have an old Asian school teacher who's like 90 now, and every couple of years she bought a property and now she's unloading them, and that's how she funded her retirement. She was a widower, so we just sold a property or two a year, and she amassed a portfolio of 15 properties just by doing it 1 or 2 at a time over years and years and years. And she's a millionaire, and she's amazing. I mean, it's cool, and I hope everyone who's on this or who follows you believes that can happen for them, because the most random people are millionaires through real estate. I mean, if you talk to some of these people, they just got started.
Yeah, that's all it takes. I can speak for being in the Bay Area because it's a very, very expensive place to enter the housing market. I think something like the average price in San Jose right now, the average median home price in San Jose is like 1.3 million right now. So can you imagine being a first-time buyer trying to buy that as your first house? It is very intimidating. So I understand, different markets where people may have problems, because I'm in this market. I happen to, buy at the right time in, the spring of 2012, which was the very bottom of the Bay Area market at the time, and it's gone nothing up from there. But I would think that, just in the last couple of years, from what we've seen with inflation pushing really high, and with mortgage rates the highest that they've been in the last 20 some years, that it's, think about, like, the question you just asked right there about asking your friends if now is a good time to buy it. And I think that, the experts would even agree with us right now that over the next, several years, I think that properties continue to appreciate, and in some markets, even double-digit appreciation going forward, because there just isn't an amount of homes that people can buy. There's just not enough right now. There's a historical, shortage of houses across the country right now that, we just don't have enough places to sell, and there's still plenty of buyer demand for the time being right now. So we'll see what happens going forward. But if rates drop a little bit, like, what happens? Like, what is your thought?
I think it explodes.
Yeah.
I read something from one of my lenders that we are 2 million homes behind. Maybe it's even higher.
Wow.
When people ask me if it's so crazy. When people ask me if it's going to crash, I just talk about the last crash. So in the last crash, we had 18 months worth of inventory, and we couldn't sell them fast enough, and it caused all the appreciation to basically disappear, and people panic and walk away from their homes. Right now, if every home that would go on the market would be absorbed, right now in this market, we have 2.2 months of inventory, which is nothing. It's literally hundreds of homes for sales in this whole area. And it would take over a year of us not selling any property in order for it to get to the point where we would have any struggle getting people in the houses. The other thing is the competition. I do this scenario where, it's basically like the cost of waiting calculator. I know everyone has one of those, but you buy a house right now, and let's say the payment, let's talk about $1 million. I know what that payment is since I just did that. Let's say it's $6,000 or $7,000 depending on your down payment and credit score. And yes, it's going to be higher today than it would be possibly in the future at X date, but you're going to miss out on the appreciation when the interest rates go down. And you're also going to miss out on the debt pay down. So you're going to enter in later. You're going to enter in with possibly a slightly lower payment, you think. It's only lower if you have the exact same scenario with the lower interest rate. But what's going to happen, Jeff? Yeah, the price is going to skyrocket. So when you add what people think, and I even have them guess, where do we think interest rates will be? And most people think between 5 and 6% next year at some point. But where do we think that same home price is going to be? And, for $1 million today, it's going to be 1.2 maybe. And then you're going to have to deal with all the bidding. You're going to have more cash. So right now we would band together, get in on that, and you'll be in a position where you're talking like you're talking, Jeff, where you bought at the right time.
Yeah. No, I love that the cost of waiting calculator. I haven't seen your version of it. I have a version of it that I try to share with any of my buyers that are trying to do the same thing. And we always try to go through the scenario of like, hey, now's the right time to buy. And if you're going to try to stretch it right now. Don't wait until you have to stretch it when interest rates go down, when everybody else jumps back in the market too. So
yeah,
I totally agree with you. Okay, next question. What steps do you take to ensure that your buyers are aware of potential hidden costs associated with purchasing a property?
Oh, it's a buyer's consultation basically, but I really call that our first strategy session together. So usually I try, if it's a natural referral, I try and just meet them at the office and go over all the different steps. If it's like a cold lead that I get, I meet them out and do some showings maybe once or twice, and then meet them in my office or at a coffee shop and I break it down. But basically we look at, what payment they're comfortable with. I just talk to them about that. This is usually before they've spoken with a lender. And then I look and see what they can afford. I show them, and they're like, oh, wow, I can't afford anything. I can afford, I have to buy a tough shed at Home Depot. So it's like, just kind of getting them used to, yes, things do cost a little bit more than what you think. And if you want what you want in the area that you want, we need to know the prices up front. I think if you don't do that and you show them some homes and you miss out on some offers, you lose the client. And then I go into a couple of net sheet scenarios. So it's either, more down, less down, what type of loan we think that they're going to get in. And I go over all the costs, all the commissions and stuff like that. I go over the appraisal costs, the home inspection costs, and then how all the different steps in the process work as far as getting into a home with an inspection, negotiating that, what happens if the appraisal goes low, some of the different closing costs when you go to title. So we're all disclosed, and if I'm going to lose them, it's going to be right there. But I usually don't, because it gets into their brain and they're kind of ready for that. I think the biggest mistake is getting too far down the road, not being transparent, and then dropping all these bombs on them. And they're like, I don't have this and I don't have that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the wrong way to do it.
Yeah. There's people forget that there's a lot of costs associated with buying real estate. And one of the things that I run into all the time is that people have enough money for the down payment, but they don't realize that there's other costs associated with buying a property. And just like you go buy a car, there's other costs associated with it. Just like you go buy anything, there's always other costs associated with, like taxes. Anybody else that's involved in the transaction is going to need to get paid too. So who's paying for that? And it's usually the buyer. Well, I would say it's usually the buyer. It's not always the buyer, but the buyers are paying for a lot of the different things that they may not know about. So having that consultation up front is really important. I would say I do the same type of a thing when we do like an analysis for different types of mortgages that maybe qualify for. I do what's called a total cost analysis, and we try to show buyers like what are all the costs that could be associated with this. And 100% of the time, I always overestimate, because inevitably, if I underestimate, they're going to call me out on it. Or they're going to be like,
Yeah.
that was more than what you said it was going to be. So I always try to overestimate on anything. And that way,
Yeah.
they know
Oh,
that
yeah.
like if they have this amount of money, then we could probably buy this type of a house, or this house is what it costs. Or one of the hidden costs, I think, on the mortgage side of stuff is whether you want to pay taxes and insurance as part of your monthly mortgage payment or not. And so people sometimes they don't realize that you may have to put reserves, as part of your closing costs to cover the escrow account, and that can get pretty dang expensive sometimes, especially when you're talking about these $1 million properties that people are buying, and
I just
taxes
did
are
that. Yeah.
$12,000.
Yeah,
Property
exactly. Yeah.
taxes. That's a lot of
It was
money
almost
equated to.
12K.
Yeah.
I'm like, where's this going?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then
So
it finally got assessed and it was less. And I'm like, can I get all that money back?
yeah, that'd be
Gotta
really
wait.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
taxes are a big thing for sure. So, well, cool, Lee. Well, do you have any other things that you feel like we might have missed that you could share with the listeners out there?
Yeah, I think the secret to buying a home is having clear communication and the right expectations. So everyone watches these shows, or they have some sort of need. They're getting married, maybe they're getting divorced, maybe they want a bigger or smaller home. Remember that need needs to stay at the forefront, and then whatever you can actually afford needs to be there too, and then you can figure out what you can purchase. The other thing I think that everyone needs to understand is everyone's timelines, not just ours as real estate professionals, but the buyer. I think when we get ghosted as professionals by a buyer, it's because they don't get what they want when they want. So when you're meeting with someone and they have some sort of need, I always ask them, when do you want to get into this house? When do you see this happening for yourself? And once I have that timeline out of them, then I ask them what they're willing to do to get this to happen. When we're on the same page like that, we're an absolute, killer team, and we get in there together. And then the strategy for every market is so key, especially the reputation of the agent and of the lender, because we actually know each other and talk to each other. So if you use someone who's doesn't have a good reputation, that actually hurts your chances to purchase, because the agent or the lender on the other side of that isn't really excited to work with them. And even if there's another offer that's very similar to yours, they're going to prefer that other one. So reputation matters. Check those online reviews, and then have more than what you think. And in your area specifically, even up here in the $1 million range, which is kind of the median, it's the median for you. Don't be afraid to bring other people into the deal with you if they're willing. That's what I'm seeing. I'm Filipino. So, I help a lot of Asian and Filipino families all the time. And, the multi-gen homes are a big deal out here, where it's, sometimes 3 generations. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that, guys. And when you actually go to sell, then you'll have the bankroll that you need to maybe get your own properties, which is what I'm doing with a Filipino family right now. There's 3 different family units that band together to buy a pretty large house. And now they're selling it, and they're each going to get enough cash to go buy their own houses. So that's a totally new thing that I'm seeing that's much more common and nothing to be ashamed about at all. I actually love it.
That's great. Well, this has been awesome, Lee. You're a wealth of information. I hope we can do this again someday. Why don't you share with the listeners out there, if they have questions for you, or if they need to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Yeah, so the easiest way to get a hold of me is on Instagram. My Instagram handle is lee.stevens_re. You can shoot me a message on that. I'd love to talk with you and help you out. I'm on all the different platforms. It's usually the same handle. And if you want videos about the Reno area, then look up Moving to Reno, Nevada, and check me out on YouTube.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, Jeff. This has been fun.
Yeah, you betcha. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Again, my name is Jeff Trevarthen. I go by Jeff the Mortgage Bro. That's my handle on Instagram and YouTube. And I do residential mortgages all across the country. I am licensed in 25 states. And if you're looking to buy somewhere in the United States, I'd love to be the one that at least gives you some advice and can help you out. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Thank you so much, Lee, for joining. And I look forward to chatting with everybody on the next show. See you later.
All right. See ya.